because I'm a human being, I like to scour the internet sometimes. One of the things I find super relatable, quite funny sometimes on the internet, is that there's these photo galleries. They come in different forms, but they generally take the title of "Reasons My Child is Crying." And so this one, for example, "Reasons My Child is Crying" is he's stuck. And you got to wonder, like, I know exactly how he got into that situation. He tried to jump from there to there and missed. Another reason is that somebody ate all of the muffins, and it was him. And I can relate to that. I like muffins. This one, he thinks the letters on his shirt are upside down. So I had to think about this one for a minute. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I told her that she had to wash her face after dinner. This one is, he's crying because he does not need a Band-Aid. And so, yeah, he didn't get hurt, and that's why he's crying. This one is crying because he doesn't want the banana that he was not offered. And so he is upset about that. This one is crying because he mixed all the Play-Doh colors together. I'm sure his parents told him not to do that. This one is crying because he doesn't want to go, even though they repeatedly told him they're not going anywhere. And so today, I want to kind of bring up this question. How do we fix a problem of our own creation? Right? It's because even though a lot of times our problems are a little bit more sophisticated than this, but a lot of times we create problems of our own creation, right? And what do we do when we just focus on something and we're just so focused on it that we refuse to let it go, and everything around us just kind of becomes an inconvenience, right? We want what we want no matter what. And so we tell ourselves what we are doing is right. And we become so overly attached to that one thing. We get a sort of tunnel vision. And in comes the smallest inconvenience. And it just completely frustrates us. It completely breaks us down. It completely ruins us. I think we've all woken up early in the morning on the day of a big important event, big important meeting, big important activity that day, and you start getting ready. Your alarm doesn't go off for the time you wanted it to go off. You're running late. You forgot to charge your phone. You didn't have milk for breakfast or something. Your gas in your car is running low, so you're going to have to stop and get gas. You have no clean towels to take a shower, and so you got to use yesterday's shirt. And no one else in your house seems to matter, right? They all seem like they're just kind of in your way, even though they're just off doing their own thing. And you're just trying your best to get out the door, but everyone just keeps asking you something or standing in your way in some way. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own sinful desires, our own agenda, that it doesn't matter what's going on around us, right? We get caught up in our own pride or our own greed. And in those moments, it doesn't really matter how many Bible verses we have memorized. In those moments, it doesn't matter how involved we are in church. We just want what we want no matter what. And so today we're talking about Balaam, and primarily focusing on Numbers chapter 22. So we're in this big 5-year series where we're going through the Bible. We are in Numbers now. And Balaam's full story, it goes from Numbers chapter 22 all the way to 24, but the bulk of the action takes place in 22. And so God's people, they're wandering around the wilderness. They're on their way to the promised land. But in this story, it's not really about God's people. This is kind of like the side story, the side quest. And most of God's people, they're pretty oblivious to what's happening in today's story. It's all taking place in the same area as God's people, but it's not really about them. So we pick up in Numbers 22, verse 1. Then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab, and they camped along the Jordan across from the Jericho. Now Balak, son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, "This horde is going to lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up grass in the field. And so here we kind of have the setting. Are God's people actually threatening King Balak? Are they actually threatening this land, Moab? The answer is no. They're not actually coming in intending to threaten them in any way. So the Moabites, they're descended from Lot. And so remember, Lot is Abraham's nephew, and they split ways at one point. And this land was given to Lot's family. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 9, the Lord said to Moses, "Do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give you any part of their land." So God says to his people, leave these people alone. Don't harass them. Be good guests. Don't provoke them in any way. Just kind of pass through. And so if anyone from Moab actually sent messengers to God's people or talked to Moses in any way, maybe they would know this fact. But Balak, the king, might even celebrate the fact that they've arrived in this place, because the Israelites, right before the story, they actually defeated a nearby king that was threatening the Midian area. And so, however, they kind of create this problem of their own, like in their own mind, of their own creation. And the solution to their fake problem is that I'm going to try to turn God's people against him. And so we continue. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was in Pethor near the Euphrates River in his native land. So Balaam, this guy right here, that's exactly what he looked like in Bible times. He is a sorcerer, and he has a 4.8 star rating. Now, the reason he has 4.8 is because if it was a perfect 5, you'd know they were all faked. So 4.8 is like the highest you can actually go. Balaam, he lived in a far-off land. He actually lives where near Abraham was from before he kind of met God and God told him to leave. And so it's interesting because he knows about God. He actually speaks to God. And Balaam knows he can only do what God tells him to do. But it seems like he doesn't actually follow God. It seems like there's other gods in his mix. Actual prophets, first of all, they don't take fees for what they do, and they don't practice sorcery. Balaam means destroyer of people, and so he has probably a pretty good reputation for cursing people. And so when Balak is shopping for sorcerers, he's like, I want that guy. I want Balaam. Even though he's kind of like farther out, he's out there, he's not in his general area. He's like, I got to go get Balaam because this problem just deserves the best. And so he says, now come and put a curse on these people because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them the fee for divination. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed. The next morning, Balaam got up and said to Balak's official, go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. So the Moabite officials returned to Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. So we see there's this breakdown in communication. Every time the message is kind of passed on, it loses like one small detail. And so clearly communication is not strong in the Moabite area. And so throughout the story, the key thing we need to know about Balaam is that Balaam, he's going to say nothing wrong, but he's going to do nothing right. He's going to say nothing wrong. He's always going to have the right answer, but he's going to do nothing right. And so Balak sent other officials, more numerous, more distinguished than the first. They came to Balaam and said, this is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and will do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me. So Balak is basically saying to Balaam, hey, how about you set the price? Whatever you want, I'll pay it. Like, just come and curse these people for me. Balaam answered them, even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything, great or small, to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now spend the night here so that I can find what else the Lord will tell me. So Balaam basically says to them, hey, if I could, I would, but I can't. If I could, I would, but I can't. But I'm going to keep this offer in the realm of possibility. So I want you guys to kind of stick around just to see what happens, see if we can find a loophole here. And so we see what Balaam wants and what God wants. They're clearly two different things. It's like, when you guys go to the Chinese grocery store as kids, and you go to the seafood aisle, and there's that big bucket of live crabs. You guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, and you guys take the tongs, you start playing with the crabs. That's so much fun, isn't it? Yeah, everyone over here is laughing. Everyone here is like, oh, no, don't. Right? And so you play with the big bucket of crabs, right? And you're like picking up the crabs, and then like your wife or your mom says, stop playing with the crabs. Someone's going to get pinched. And here's the secret to that. No one ever gets pinched. They're lying to you. And so you're like, fine. And so you put down the crabs, right? You stop playing with the crabs, but you're still holding the tongs, right? You're not going to put down the tongs. This is kind of what's happening here. It's like Balaam is not putting down the tongs. He's still holding the crab tongs. It's still like, if opportunity arises, I'm going to stick my tongs in there, right? His words say, no, I can't take your money. His words are saying like, no, can't do it. Sorry. His words say, no, I'm not playing with the crabs. But in his heart says, yes, I really want to. Like his heart says, like, if the opportunity arises, if we can find the right situation here, like maybe the crab people need help moving the crabs or something like that, I will be ready. And so that night, God came to Balaam and said, since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but only do what I tell you. And so here's like Balaam's ultimate excuse. He's got that stubbornness. He's got that tunnel vision. Now it's going to set in. He's like, yes, this is my opportunity. Like, I know God doesn't want me to do this. He's like, kind of gives me this, like, only do it if I tell you to, right? This is what I want. I'm going to do whatever it is that I want, no matter what. And so Balaam got up in the morning. He saddled his donkey. He went to the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with sword drawn in his hand, it turned off the road into the field. Balaam beat it to get back onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path through the vineyard with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he beat the donkey again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry, and he beat it with his staff. Yeah, that's an angry donkey. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. And so the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, on which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? So I find it very interesting. The donkey is very logical. Like the donkey has a very well thought out like argument against Balaam. But Balaam, he's having absolutely none of it. He's like, listen, if I had a sword, I would kill you right now. Right? The great sorcerer who's known as destroyer of people, he's being bested by a donkey. And so this guy, he can destroy an army with his words, but he cannot handle a donkey scraping his foot. And so I understand his frustration completely, right? Because I can build a house in Mexico, but I cannot fold a basket of laundry, right? And that one single basket of laundry causes me all sorts of frustration. Like Balaam wants what he wants. He's going to do what he's going to do no matter what. I got to curse these people. I got to get paid. And so when we're so headstrong in sin, when we're so caught up in bad attitudes or bad desires and sinful desires, when our mind is only on ourselves and what we're trying to get instead of loving others, Like it's always the little things that frustrate us the most, isn't it? Right? It's like the things that just like we don't expect coming in and pestering us. And so the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. Then the angel of the Lord asked him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would have killed you by now, but I would have spared it." And so the angel, I find it's very interesting. The angel's first concern is for the donkey. Like, oh man, like, what are you doing to your donkey? Stop beating it. Like, why are you hitting your donkey? The donkey is just trying to help you, Balaam, right? I would have definitely killed you. I would have spared the donkey, right? If you tried to cross, it's like you owe this donkey an apology. Now, sadly, the donkey never gets an apology. And so that's, hashtag apologize to the donkey. Balaam ends up going and he ends up blessing God's people because he can only do what God tells him to do. And so remember we said Balaam, he's the kind of guy, he says nothing wrong. Over and over he says, I can only do what God tells me to do. That's what I'm bound by. He knows the right answer. He's gone to Sunday school. He's got it all down. But Balaam, he also does nothing right. Like his greed, his pride gives him this sort of tunnel vision. Balaam has deceived himself because of his greed, his desire for money. Our sinful nature, it has a way of doing this to us. Like we get stuck in, I want what I want, nothing else matters. We refuse to put down the tongs. We throw this temper tantrum at minor inconveniences. We can so easily deceive ourselves into thinking, I am right, they are wrong, and what I am doing is right. What am I doing? It is justified. And so we can deceive ourselves, we can sometimes deceive those around us, but we can never deceive God, right? God sees it all. And so for us, how do we know when we've actually deceived ourselves? Like, how do we know if we're stuck in this tunnel vision, right? It can be with the small things, the minor inconveniences, or it could just be this, like, big outlook on life. Like, am I actually doing the right thing? Am I on the right career path? Am I pushing people away? Am I actually doing what God wants me to do? Am I so caught up in sin that I don't even realize what's going on around me? The best way to know if we're actually deceiving ourselves, if we have that tunnel vision, it's to look at what we're doing. Are we serving other people? Are we treating other people well? Or are we trying to smack other people back onto the road? Are we making an effort to resist sin? Are we making an effort to resist temptation? Do we actually put our screens aside when we're tempted, or are we inviting them to stay the night? And so we're not saved by good works. We're not saved by like our righteousness and how we like fix up our lives. But these good deeds, they show us how our relationship with God is. It says in James, "But prove yourselves doers of the word, not merely hearers who delude yourselves." In Jeremiah, it says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart, examine the mind, and will reward each person according to their conduct, according to what their deeds deserve." In Galatians, it says, "If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions." And so like Balaam, I think we love to know the things about God. Like we love to have that like biblical wisdom. And a lot of times we don't even consider like the action side of it, like how that is supposed to actually play out. The application question, we kind of glaze over that. And so like we're Asians, right? We will gladly sit through a 12-hour presentation on like giving and serving and loving other people. But a lot of times we won't spend like 2 hours in Hartford talking to the homeless or something like that. We won't actually go out and do anything about it. And so there's like two sides to the good deeds, the righteousness thing that kind of ends up being a fallacy. Is on one side, we don't want to start thinking that our good deeds, our righteousness is how we get right with God. We don't want to think like that's how I get saved, is by doing good things. Because the truth is Jesus died to make us right with God. And he died to make us right with God wherever we are at and however bad we are. And he offers this as a free gift to anyone, no matter what they've done or who they are. And it's Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. That is the only way to make us right with God. It's not good deeds. Now, on the other side of the kind of good deeds, righteousness thing, it's like Balaam's side, is we don't want to neglect like the good deeds. We don't want to neglect the righteousness and fighting temptation, because we get in our minds like, I know God, I go to church, I got all the Bible stories down, I got some verses memorized, and so we kind of deceive ourselves. And so when it comes to good deeds, when it comes to the righteousness, it's an indication of where our heart is. And so don't deceive yourselves. Our actions should be changed because of a loving relationship with a God who gave everything for us. Let's pray.